Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in amma ba'du. This is the fourth part reacting to Sheikh Yasir Qadhi's journey moving away from Najdi theology, going towards adopting the position that calling upon other than Allah is not shirk. In the previous episode, Yasir Qadhi has given us his theory that what is at the core of the savageness of ISIS is Najdi theology, explaining that if you understand the aqidah of Tawheed and Wala and Bara and Takfir the way it's presented by the Najdis, you understand where ISIS are coming from, and I have given you my little rant on this particular matter, and I would like to add to this particular topic, asking Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, Afan Allah wa yak, you make the case for khorooj. Yes, as I said, I've listened to very few lectures of yours, but very often it was an underlying thing, and then recently I was asked to look at your library chat where you're discussing the events of the first Hijri century, and that library chat of yours is from beginning to end a case for khorooj. You have thrown out of the window all the aqwal of the ai from the distant past and the less distant past, and of course the present, prohibiting khorooj against the wulat, be there jawr or whatever. And then at the end of that library chat, you have the nerve to say that the best is to be a quietist. So the whole lecture, you make no case for quietism. Your analysis all leads to one conclusion. Khorooj is the way of the salaf. It has been done and it was justified. And if it was justified in that day and age, it's implicitly even more justified in this day and age. And then you just make this kind of claim, oh, but the best is to be a quietist. There is this strange approach of Sheikh Yasir Qadhi of claiming one thing, but then making the case for the complete opposite. Just like in the matter where we are right here, he's saying, oh, majority doesn't mean itself is right. And then majority. On and on and on and on and on and on and on. This is a very mysterious approach of his. Anyway, let's move forward and look at what he has to say next.
And if they are, then something is wrong with the theology that I'm attracting to. I need to see what's up with that. And by the way, these are all things that my colleagues at al-Maghrib, they can attest to, my closest students at the time. These are conversations that are beginning almost a decade ago, from now. And I basically, told the Maghrib Institute I can no longer teach Light of Guidance, give me the other courses, but that course I'm not going to teach it. And for a few months, I immersed myself in other books that typically I would only read to select and refute, right? Because see, here's the key point. Here is the key point. And I'm now addressing not just my students, but the many critics that will be watching this video to find their 10-second snippets in order to refute.
Well, I do hope that I have fulfilled your conditions. I have not taken any 10-second snippets. I am doing a very tedious job going into details and presenting what you have said the way you have said it, with just a little bit of acceleration for sake of, time. That's it. So I do hope that my work will at least get some consideration. Maybe not by Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, because I understand that, he's up there and I'm a little guy nowhere. But maybe his followers could understand that maybe I don't fit the type of refutation that should just be brushed off.
When your niyyah is just to refute, you literally have a wall, you literally have a barrier that will not allow the evidences and the perspective of the other person to be understood by you. And I'm not trying to be dismissive, but think of Trump supporters when you quote them whatever fact that you want. Think of the flat earthers. Think of anybody who is already convinced of a paradigm. No matter what you say to that person, they are even more convinced because of what you said, right? And that is why I do not get involved with the refutation culture. Refutations only cater to your own audiences by and large. Generally, the default, when you refute, you're only validating to your own followers, right? And those that are outside the movement or those that are outside of who you are, they are not interested in what others are saying to you. So what happened for me around a decade ago was...
Right, I would like to say, you quote the Trump, I mean, you're talking about the Trump followers. The same goes with the other end of the spectrum. They are not prepared to listen to anything either. Likewise, you say that, the Najdis and whatnot, the Salafis, like this in England, you have this new label that we are entitled to, which is boxhead and whatnot. I would like to say, Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, the same applies to everybody else, especially to the followers of the superstar du'at, which are nothing less than fanatics. And Sheikh Yasir Qadhi allow myself to tell you that whenever you are criticized, and I fully admit that a lot of the criticism that is done against you is wrong. I completely admit that. All right. However, within that 90% batil, there is a 10% of very legitimate criticism on matters that are serious. But how do your fans respond to that? With critical thinking, analyzing your claims and the claims of your critic and saying, all right, there is some truth to this, but there's some truth to that. No. It is, as you have explained, the wall. And what you get is a very sometimes virulent reaction of including some unbefitting vocabulary in just rebuking the claim of the other party and absolutely not considering what they have to say. So Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, what you say is true, but it applies to you as well. And it takes an effort from everybody, right, to do what we have spoken about here. That was a little mistake. No, that's even worse now. 1 second, please. Oh dear, what have I done? Come on, dude. No, not like that. Okay, almost there. 1 second, dude. Okay. As I said, it takes an effort for everybody to stick to what we have explained here. We are an ummah whose wala and bara is to the book of Allah and the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When it comes to individuals, after the Sahaba, there is no more wala and bara whatsoever. We take the haqq where it comes from and we reject the batil wherever it comes from. And having this fanatic attachment to individuals, that is a highway to misguidance. Even if these individuals are righteous people. Like some of the A'imma said, من أوسع أودية الباطل الغلو في الأفاضل. From the biggest valleys of falsehood is the exaggeration towards the virtuous people. So, let's move on.
I psychologically unlinked myself to the Salafi da'wah. And I said, I want to see genuinely. I want to see open-minded, not in order to find fault and refute, which is what I was doing pre, that era. I have a whole section of Ash'ari books, a whole section of Sufi books here. I have them. And I have read them. For my master's, I read them. For my PhD, I'm reading them. But I'm reading them in order to find that one, nugget that I think I can refute. Not even a nugget, it's not a nugget, that bullseye is the appropriate word. just like many of you are just listening to me now to find that 10-second bullseye to refute. And you know,
all right, again, that's not what I'm doing, but I shall talk about this more in a second.
for that audience, nothing you can say is of use because they have already made their minds up. You can't preach to somebody who's not interested in hearing the sermon, if you like, right? So you have to psychologically be ready to listen, like what exactly is being said here. And that's why all of the writings I had read before this didn't really impact me, because I was wed to my worldview of Najdism. I was committed to that worldview. And anybody who was outside of that worldview, there's no chance of them being right in my mind. That's really what it is. There's no chance of them being right. So once there's no chance of them being right, well then, no matter what they say, I'm just going to find what I need to and then refute it. I've already had my mind made up. These incidents, the global politics, the da'wah, seeing the effects of teaching, and overall the uncomfortableness that I began to feel of always having to talk about issues that only bother, a small group of people. They're only the religious group, and finding fault with other religious people. I really de-linked myself from the Najdi da'wah spiritually, psychologically. I said, let me understand really what is going on. And I say this because, again, I've studied the books. My PhD is in theology. My master's from MA in Medina is in Aqidah. I took from the great ulama. I studied with them, right? I'm an expert in their theology. Yet still, everything that I read up until these incidents that changed my mind, I'm not interested in what the other group is saying. I'm really not. I'm only interested in how to refute it. I'm only interested to find that snippet to show how wrong they are. So I made a conscious decision, a conscious effort to let go of my biases. I made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help me understand what's going on. And then I read and I read and I read with a genuinely open mind. This began, as I said, around a decade ago. And it eventually culminated in me not just stopping teaching Light of Guidance, but eventually leaving Al-Maghrib Institute, which I love immensely. It has done a lot.
All right, let's pause here for a minute. Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, Afan Allah wa Iyahu, if you ever listen to what I have to say, you say that you are reading the books of the people who oppose the Najdi Dawah with the intention of refuting. Yes, I understand that. You said that that this is something that is widely done. People are not reading for the sake of understanding where other people are coming from. They read for the sake of refuting and blocking away. Yes, that is done. You say that you have emotionally detached yourself from salafiyah and you ask Allah to show you the truth. And I do not question your sincerity in your dua. But I would like you to consider the following. Looking at your journey and looking at all the dhulm that was made to you by Salafis. Looking at all the false refutations that were done against you. Looking at all the speech that was taken from you, twisted, and then either presented to scholars or refuted in a way to tarnish your image, etc. Could it not be that within yourself there was a resentment towards Salafis and the Salafi da'wah, while at the same time you were experiencing a level of warmth from other factions that was causing an emotional clash to you? Could it not be that, unlike before when you were reading for the sake of refuting, could it not be that now you are reading for the sake of, or the hidden intention of finding an exit door? Could it not be that you were tired of what you got yourself worked up into and that you needed an exit? from the Salafi da'wah, just like apostates who are tired with Islam because they're not living Islam correctly. Islam is a burden to them. Why can't we drink alcohol? Why can't I have the blonde chick? Why do I have to hang out with these people at the masjid? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? When they then find some ridiculous shubha, they're like, oh yes, that's true. Islam actually doesn't make sense. Khalas, now I can apostate with a clear conscience. Because while if the person still openly believes in Islam, the beer is just not going to taste right. Because he lives in a contradiction. The blonde chick on the mattress, it's just not going to feel right. Because somehow here there is still something that is bugging him. I'm doing something wrong. So it's only when you find the excuse. Look there, like Islam can't explain that, so it must be wrong. Khalas, throw it out. And I have a friend of mine who, not a friend of mine, I know a number of people who have gone down that way. It's quite interesting to look at the path of apostasy. Like I have somebody who was my friend. He apostated because he said, I don't understand, does the earth turn around the sun or does the sun turn around the earth? And I called up scholars from Saudi Arabia and they couldn't explain it to me in a convincing way. So, I don't know, man. This doesn't make sense. Like, Islam can't be the truth. And so he apostated. And straight as he apostated, what did he do? Was he somebody who's now living, the praiseworthy, the Western life that everybody looks up to, a successful individual, having a good relation, stable job? He said, no. Brothels. That's where he's hanging out. Strip clubs and brothels. Right? So that is the process that is happening. So Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, you asked Allah for guidance. And if you're sincere, Allah is not going to let you down. Just as you say that you had to open your mind to reach where you are now, don't close your mind now. Because you're not dead yet. Your journey is still ongoing. And keep a mind open to see beyond what you're upon now.
Good, and a lot of khair is in it. Alhamdulillah, I thank Allah for that opportunity as well. But I felt that as a part of my moving on, I should also move on to other institutes and whatnot. I publicly wrote an article stating that I'm no longer considering myself a Salafi. I have said multiple times that I moved on from the teachings of Ibn Abdul Wahhab. The latest Q&A was nothing surprising. I mean, obviously I moved on. I don't understand why the backlash was so severe when this has been my position for so many years. But anyway, I do understand at some level, and you'll see why I understand. Also, I want to make one other point before I get to the technical stuff. All of this transition, all of these changes that are happening, they had nothing to do with my education or PhD, at the institute that I did it from. I didn't take any classes on Najdism over there. I didn't have any quote unquote shubuhat exposed from that university. On the contrary, no doubt the university shaped me in many ways for other aspects, and I've spoken about that. But in this issue of Najdism, in this issue of understanding the definitions of Tawheed and Shirk and whatnot, really it was my own da'wah to the people and masses, and to become one of the icons and leaders of that movement for so many years, and to see the harms that these types of teachings are causing, and to...
Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, afan Allah wa yak. What sense does that even make? I do not believe that you actually secretly believe what you just said. How can you claim that a PhD level study at Yale University, out of all places, on a subject which is something to do with methods of learning, etc. How can you claim that this has not, at a fundamental level, influenced you in this particular matter? Because, as you have explained in a Q&A, I believe it was in Malaysia or somewhere in that region of the world, these people, what they did to you, like, because that's their methodology, is that your structure, your paradigm, first what they do, they take all of this apart. They destroy it completely and just now they leave you to it. And Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, from my limited observation of what you're up to, that's exactly what you are doing to the Muslim masses. You are removing the fundamentals of Islam one by one, by one, by one, and opening Pandora boxes one after another. So, as we shall see in the next discussion, like when we got into the ilmi stuff, we shall see whether you are undermining fundamentals in a legitimate way, if you're doing general questioning of proof and analysis of text, etc., or are you undermining fundamentals? Let's move forward.
See global events that are linked to these types of theologies. That's what's shaping my views and my changes. Nothing to do with my education.
Right, about that we have spoken in the previous lecture. Right, whoever has, wants to know more, please refer to the previous lecture.
And another point I'd like to also just mention for the record, not that it's a big deal at all, but I mean, a lot of people are associating me with a particular sheikh in Mecca of the Ashraf, of the descendants of the Prophet by the name of Dr. Sharif Hatim al-Awni, and they're saying that I am basically his student and I've taken from him. Again, for the record, I want to be very clear here, and my colleagues at Al-Maghrib Institute can testify to this. Actually, interestingly enough, I don't want to mention his name, but you can figure out from the context, one of the senior people of Al-Maghrib, one of the people, I'm a good friend of mine, I love and respect him, I hope the feeling will always be mutual. That when I began approaching him and constantly going back and forth, he was the one who said, "Ya Yasir, you sound a lot like Hatim al-Awni." And I'm like, "Why? Is he saying the same thing?" He goes, "Yeah, haven't you read his writings?" I said, "No." And of course, I'd heard of him, but I haven't read his writings until that point. And so he's the one who introduced me to the writings of Sheikh Hatim al-Awni. And so I started reading, and I was like, this is what I've been saying. This is it right here. So I discovered those teachings, and I came to these conclusions before I read Sheikh Hatim, and my colleague at Al-Maghrib can testify to this, right? And once I discovered him, then I contacted some of his students, and I visited him, and we discussed, and we continue to discuss, and we are on the same wavelength. But I want to be very, very clear here. Nothing that it wouldn't, I'm not astaghfirullah if that were the case. There's nothing I'm ashamed of, but no, Sheikh Hatim did not influence me. Sheikh Hatim's writings did not cause me to change my worldviews on this issue. On the contrary, I discovered him after I had come to my conclusions, and not knowing that I'm not the only one. There are many other people out there, and I do encourage all of you to listen to Sheikh Hatim al-Awni, a great alim and sheikh, and somebody who's gone through pretty much the same thing, because he was Najdi, Salafi in his younger days. And then what he is saying is basically what I am saying as well, which is what the bulk of the ummah says. Now, I left, as I said, all of that teaching.
I don't know Sheikh Hatim al-Awni. I don't know what he is preaching. So I can't really say anything about this. Moving forward.
I did a sharp turn as well in my lectures. If I don't view talking about the mistakes of other practicing Muslims to be the best use of my time, and I've really moved on from that da'wah.
Right. So we've spoken about that in the second episode of this series. Whoever wants to know more, please refer back to that.
But I never explained in detail why. And as I said, this lecture is meant for those whom I feel they have a right over me. That's their haqq on me, right? In the end of the day, I acknowledge that I introduced many people to Ibn Abdul Wahhab. One of the most prominent, I hope this doesn't come off as a boast because I'm not proud of it anymore, but I think after Bilal Phillips, I would have been the one that was the most instrumental in introducing the ideas of the Najdi movement to the English-speaking world for a long period of my 20s and early 30s. And the books that I wrote and the lectures that I gave are all the manifestation of that. Now, I think it's only fair that now that I've moved on from that I explain to those that are genuinely sincere, that have a right over me, especially my students. I explain why that is the case, and then they are free to do as they decide and choose. And I do understand that I'm entering into the refutation, counter-refutation territory. I do just humbly request all of you that are watching this, in order to refute, and you think that is the most beneficial to the ummah, before you do that, just read my book, The Critical Study of Shirk, and then don't rehash the same arguments, because I've written a book on the subject. Don't rehash the same stuff out there. And anyway, if you are sincere in your refutations.
All right, this also I have spoken about in the first episode, and we reject that request, Sheikh Yasir Qadi. We are going to look at the proofs that you're going to bring to make your point. We're going to analyze those proofs, and then we're going to compare that with what we know about the Aqidah of Tawheed and the arguments for Tawheed, whether they be in your Sharh of Kashf Shubuhat or not. All right? But this idea that, okay, I have written about this, so me having moved on from that automatically disqualifies it. No, I'm sorry, that's unacceptable.
I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants me sincerity and forgives my sins, and I pray that we see each other in Jannah, because I am certain,
Ameen.
that in Allah's mercy, anybody who has iman and taqwa, anyone who says the kalima, and especially those who believe in the arkan, the 6 arkan in the hadith of Jibreel, and they have iman and taqwa, that they are upon good and upon guidance and upon rightly guided, and inshallah ta'ala they will enter Jannah. All people of iman and taqwa. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. Anybody who turns to Allah wanting to purify their soul is sincere in this regard, and especially those who have the 6 arkan. If you don't have the 6 arkan, then you are upon misguidance, and that's what Ahl al-Bid'ah is. The Ahl al-Bid'ah that I believe are those who reject the status of the Sahaba, they reject the concepts of the Sunnah. These are Ahl al-Bid'ah. Even
well, Sheikh Yasir Qadi, this is the first rukn. It's the first rukn of al-Islam, and it's the first rukn of al-Iman. Al-Iman billah, shahadati an la ilaha illallah. All right, so this is why we're doing this. So we believe it's the best use of our time. We believe it's a necessity for the sake of preserving that rukn of Islam and the rukn of Iman.
They say the kalima, okay? But anybody who says the kalima and follows the hadith of Jibreel and exhibits iman and taqwa and avoids the major sins, I don't want to make them a target of my animosity and hatred at all. The ummah has far bigger issues and problems, and I think that it is a problem to problematize other pious Muslims, even as I understand that many pious Muslims are taught something that makes them problematize other Muslims beyond other problems with the ummah. I hope that makes sense, inshallah ta'ala. I'm going to take a quick break and then inshallah resume.
All right, this is the end of the first part where he is talking about his journey. Now I would like to point out a few matters. Mainly this matter right here. In the next part, we're going to be analyzing texts, proofs that he uses to justify his position. However, all along his journey, there hasn't been a single ayah of the Quran, a single hadith of the authentic ahadith that came and bothered his paradigm of Najdi theology. Let me explain what I mean. He explained to us that there was, first of all, the matter of the majority, the matter of clarity, then the rise of ISIS, and the disgust for being all the time involved in refuting and bashing other Muslims and being in a constant conflictual situation. All right? Now, I have added my part to it, saying that I believe that one of the main reasons is also the fact that Salafis have emotionally traumatized him by wronging him. I believe that was also a main cause. But there has in no way, shape or form been like, all this Tawheed and Shirk stuff, it all makes sense. But there is this one ayah in the Quran that we can't explain. That just busts everything. Like read the Quran every month, and it's just every time I come on this or these two ayat, they're like clear-cut contradict everything about. Like, there is this hadith in Sahih Muslim, and Imam Nawawi mentions it in Riyadh al-Salihin, that clearly contradicts the idea that calling upon other than Allah is shirk. There is none of that. None of that. What led him to question is emotional problems. Then these emotional problems have led him to re-look at the texts, as if now this new emotional state is going to bring a different perspective on the same text. So this is what we're going to explore in coming episodes, inshallah ta'ala. We'll stop here for now. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.